Let's play a little game, shall we? Never have I ever followed on somebody's TikTok when they say follow for more at the end of their video. Nor will I, because that's literally the worst, laziest, most terrible call to action that you could possibly come up with. Most people are wondering why they're not getting leads, why they're not getting sales, why are people not commenting on my posts, why are people not DMing me and following and submitting applications? Because your call to actions are garbage. They don't make anyone want to take action. I sure don't. The thing that everyone is getting wrong with their call to actions is they are expressly telling people what to do. Subliminal messaging is going to be absolutely everything when it comes to creating call to actions that are actually going to, one, inspire action, and two, your audience thinks it was their idea. This idea of subliminal messaging connects directly to buyer psychology. So we are influencing people's decisions subconsciously on a subconscious level, telling people follow for more, go click this link. The link is in my bio. Those are lazy call to actions. When you influence decisions subconsciously, it's about enhancing their emotional connection and guiding natural decision making. So tapping into their psychology. And ultimately, what this is going to do is allow you to have ethical, psychology driven content and sales strategies, because the only people that are going to be taking action are people who are actually aligned and need what you're selling. There's a couple things that you need to know. Number one is that the brain doesn't make decisions based on logic. It makes decisions based off of survival. This is why subliminal messaging works. It taps into primal instincts and subconscious means. Your primal brain is the one making decisions, not your rational brain. And with that information, we also know that the primal brain is above all else selfish. Your audience is constantly asking themselves one thing and one thing only: what's in it for me? Subliminal messaging is going to subtly answer that question through different emotional cues and subliminal calls to actions that actually work. To understand a little bit more about what subliminal messaging is, right? Essentially, what it's doing is it's influencing thoughts or feelings below the conscious level. So, again, this is super subtle and it would often go unnoticed by your audience, but it can still shift perception and prompt action. They're not going to know what it is that made them want to take action. They are just going to do it. I want to debunk the idea that using subliminal messaging is manipulative or sneaky. It's simply smart marketing when you're using it ethically, because telling people what to do and being in their face about click this, follow me, go buy this is not actually doing anything for you, and you're not tapping into those deeper level human behavioral principles that are actually going to allow people to make decisions in a way that is aligned with their needs and their desires. It's about understanding human behavior, not exploiting it. A couple examples of this. And this goes back to what we know about neuromarketing. Subtle placements in TV shows or movies. So if you've ever seen a Ford truck drive very conspicuously through the scene, or you see somebody drinking a Coke or out of a Starbucks cup, those are subliminal messaging tactics, and that is leveraging that halo effect in sales psychology, where they are creating a brand association between this show or movie and these actors that people love, and making that connection with these brands. Another really, really famous example of this is Coca-Cola's partnerships with American Idol. Something that they did really well was actually infusing color psychology and specific fonts to evoke emotions. Coca-Cola is the ultimate example for the innocent archetype. They are really trying to foster feelings of nostalgia that goes along with that brand, and something that is a psychological trigger for that feeling of nostalgia is that Coca-Cola red. And infusing that color placement psychology inside of American Idol, you'll notice that in the OG episodes, the changing rooms and the furniture and often people's outfits were that Coca-Cola red. And that was that subliminal messaging. They saw millions and millions and millions of dollars more doing these subliminal placements than Ford did when they did a commercial with American Idol, where it was very in your face, very follow for more vibes, because they had the people that were on American Idol washing this vehicle, and that was like part of the commercial. They did not make nearly as much money off of that very in your face loud placement as Coca-Cola made from American Idol's really subliminal color psychology placements. So the power here is in the data and the numbers. The way that this actually applies to you is embedding words or visuals in your content that you're already creating to reinforce desired actions. So directional arrows subtly pointing to a button, having people with an arrow on their carousel that makes people subliminally want to click through. You're not, or scroll through. You're not saying scroll to the end and being super in their face about it, but that subliminal message of, hey, there's more, is going to keep people scrolling through your carousels on Instagram. You can also infuse this with your calls to action. Now, that was a very, very low level call to action there, but you can be more strategic with this. If you're creating a video talking about your framework or your principles and why you do the things that you do, just dropping in like, in my membership, I teach blah, blah, blah. And so it's a very short little add-on to the sentence, but you're putting it in people's heads that this is something that could be taught in the membership. This is something that they could learn from you, but you're not telling them to book a call. You're not telling them to go buy your stuff. You are subliminally putting that action in their mind by the way that you're communicating what you were already going to say. What we understand about the subconscious mind is that your brain is processing cues much faster than your conscious mind is able to. So an example of this where you could see this in action, imagine you are out walking on a trail and you see a root across the trail that kind of looks like it could be a snake, and your body on instinct immediately you recoil, you jump back, right? Whether it's a snake or not, that's that subconscious brain constantly scanning for danger. By the time you realize, oh, that's not a snake, it's literally just a root, that is a much larger amount of time than what your initial subconscious reaction was, which was to remove you from danger. That's a very real world and extreme example, but we see these same things pop up in content. Our subconscious brain is constantly processing stimuli to assess for threats. And again, that primal brain is selfish. We're constantly looking for what's in it for me. And so your subconscious mind being able to process those bits of information that you drop into your video is going to be a lot more impactful than one in your face call to action at the end of the video. So what you're doing here is actually tapping into emotional triggers like trust, fear of missing out, excitement. And these emotions are going to drive purchasing decisions much more than logic. And this is also why the anchoring effect in sales psychology is so impactful, and we get into that in some other videos. Subliminal messaging supports creating call to actions when you, number one, either build desire, create emotional triggers, and then reinforce the CTA. So you can use these subliminal cues to kind of just amplify what your audience wants or needs so they feel motivated to act. Using phrases that are assuming the sale and presumptive messaging are going to be an example of this call to action. So rather than saying, something that I do for my clients is XYZ, what you would say instead, very simple shift, is when you're my client, we do XYZ. And so you're still saying the same thing, you're still delivering the same information, but you're shifting that frame there so that you're more of it's a lot more presumptive messaging. And that is putting those subliminal triggers into their mind where you are pushing them to take action. Oh, when you're my client. Oh, so I should take action to become your client because I want that thing, right? So that is how that's a much more powerful example, because again, rather than you telling them to do something, they came up with it. The next piece of this is creating emotional triggers. So adding urgency in a subtle way. So talking about, Q4 coming to an end, right? Rather than saying you need to act now because blah, 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 blah. Instead, we say Q4 is coming to an end. And so a lot of people are focusing on blah, 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 blah. And so you are subliminally putting that urgency into their mind that like, hey, I'm running out of time, without you having to physically say you are running out of time. And then of course, reinforcing the call to action. So repetition without being overt. So showing your CTA in multiple forms, spoken, written, visual, creating small visual cues like arrows, like I said, subtly pointing towards a button or text that draws attention. All of those subliminal things are going to be a lot more powerful, I can't stress this enough, than you saying go to the link in my bio. I really want to stress here the ethical aspect of subliminal messaging here too, because subliminal messaging is not about manipulation. It's about meeting your audience needs in a more natural way. What you're doing is you are using these techniques to persuade, not to pressure your audience. And that is a very big, important distinction. And you're also avoiding manipulation by avoiding making false promises or creating false urgency. Instead, you are inspiring action that's aligned and authentic for the user based off of the things that you know that they need and the reason that they are consuming that content in the first place. The biggest thing to keep in mind with creating these CTAs is your audience should feel drawn to click or take action. They should feel pulled to it without being pushed. Using a CTA that is subliminally embedded in your videos rather than flashing it on the screen or cramming it in at the end is going to be a lot more impactful. And this ties into our converts framework, where we're able to leverage these subliminal elements like visuals and language fit into a broader strategy so that you can ensure that you are checking every single box based off of your audience's psychology so that you can control your revenue and sales. A few common mistakes that I want to address. Number one, adding too many subliminal elements can really confuse your audience and make it feel overwhelming. 1 to 2 per video is what I would say is the absolute limit, and keep it simple. Choose a few intentional cues rather than layering on too many, okay? Number 2 is big mistake I see is ignoring your audience's alignment. So your subliminal cues have to resonate with your ideal client's psychology and their values. So don't use urgency if your audience values slow, deliberate decision making. If they are more of an analytical buyer or an amiable buyer, and you know that that is the core of your audience, you want to focus in and make these subliminal call to actions be very aligned with their psychology, what they value, and ultimately what their decision making process is going to look like. And ensure that your call to actions and your subliminal messaging is not so complex that your average person isn't going to pick up on it. Confusion is still the number one conversion killer. And with infusing these subliminal tactics, you want to be very intentional and strategic in a way that you know it's still going to be impactful, even if it's more subtle, but it's not so subtle that nobody is even going to catch it. So you have to actually leverage these tactics based off of the psychological principle for it to be impactful. It's important to remember, as always, that subliminal messaging isn't about magic or manipulation. It's rooted in psychology. This is scientifically backed. So it's not about if it's going to work for you, it's how it works. If you wanted to see some of these subtle strategies in action, you can take a look at my Instagram. I do this in literally every single post. And if you're somebody who feels like you don't really know how to apply this to your business, or you're like, maybe this is the problem, maybe it's not, just book in a free gap assessment with our team. They will go through and audit all of your social media platforms, your offer suite, your systems, what you have going on in your business, and help you to identify the gaps so you know exactly what to focus on in the new year to actually move the needle forward in your business. So you can find that link down below. As always, be sure to subscribe to the channel. My DMs are always open, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.